Hello everyone, welcome to the first session on anthropology. Today we'll be dealing with the syllabus 1.1 of paper 1. So it comprises of the meaning, the scope and development of anthropology. In today's class, we'll be dealing only with the meaning part, plus we'll be discussing some of the objectives of anthropology. The remaining part, that is the scope and development, will be taken in the upcoming lecture series. At the end of this lecture, you will be able to define anthropology in a much broader view. What is anthropology? Anthropology is made by two Greek words. One is anthropos, which means human or man, and logia, which means the science of or the study of. Anthropology can be defined as the science of or the study of man in a holistic perspective. This view of anthropology or the definition of anthropology captures a very narrow view, but anthropology is much wider in scope. Try to explore the wider view of anthropology by exploring the definitions of various anthropologists. The first anthropologist whom we are going to discuss is Alfred L. Kroeber. He defined anthropology as the most humanistic of the sciences and the most scientific of the humanities. Kroeber's definition of anthropology captures three aspects of it, namely, first, it is a science. Second, it is more human-centered. Thirdly, we can also infer that it tries to bridge the gap between the science and the humanities. Let's see all these aspects in a very detailed way. Why anthropology is said to be a science? It is said to be science because it follows empirical methods to collect and gather data. So, what are these empirical methods? Empirical methods in anthropology includes participant observation, which means anthropologists will immerse themselves within a culture and try to observe or gather details. Second thing, it also uses other methods such as questionnaire, surveys, etc. to gather data. Further, it also employs ethnography to collect meaningful and scientific data. So, what is ethnography? I can provide you an analogy. Imagine Fahin, a Buddhist scholar who visited Gupta Empire. After visiting this empire, he wrote accounts on this Gupta Empire after seeing everything in detail. So, this kind of approach can be correlated with ethnography. Second thing, it is science because, like any other discipline, it also employs and publish their research in peer-reviewed journals, just as scientists in other fields do. Third, whatever decisions or evidence, whatever the conclusions are made, it is based on evidences and data and scientific methods. So, because of these reasons, we can say anthropology is a science. Let's see why anthropology is human-centered. It is human-centered because it focuses on human culture majorly. Human culture includes the customs, the traditions, beliefs, social organizations, plus the dressings, the food we eat, etc. It includes a whole gamut of things. Second, it also concentrates on the biological aspects of humanity, such as how we evolved or how humans adapt to different environment or the genetical aspects of human. Further, it also studies the human language. It tries to understand how languages have evolved over time and what is the cultural significance of it. And lastly, it also includes the study of material remains of the past. It is done through archaeology. So again, it is more focused on the humanistic aspect of man. So because of these reasons, it can be said that anthropology is more human-centered. At that point, we have seen that it bridges the gap between the humanities plus the science. So it is more interdisciplinary in nature. Why it is said to be interdisciplinary? Because it it takes help from other subjects like sociology, psychology, history, and linguistics to study culture. For example, if an anthropologist needs to analyze why certain rituals are being celebrated in certain societies, he needs to understand the psychological aspect of it. So he has to take help from a psychologist. So by this we can say it is interdisciplinary. Second, to study biology or biological aspects of humans, such as how we evolved and how our genetics are there, it has to take help from the biology or the paleontologist or the genetics. So again, we can say that it has been interdisciplinary in this approach. Third, imagine anthropologists or the archaeologists who have discovered certain artifacts. They need to understand what is the raw material and how it has been produced. So where they go and ask. So they have to take help from a geologist or a chemistry subject major to understand the raw materials used in it, so that it will be helpful for them to make some analyzations. So again, we can say that it is interdisciplinary in nature. So let's summarize. Let's try to understand the key aspects what we have taken from the Kroger's definition. First, it is a discipline that centers on the study of humans, their culture, societies, behaviors, and beliefs. It also underscores that it is interdisciplinary in nature. It bridges the gap between humanities and the sciences. Since this is because it studies man in totality, and no other discipline, like any other humanities, doesn't study man in such a wider view. For example, let's take sociology. It only deals with the social aspect of humans, but it doesn't deal with the cultural aspect or the economic aspect, etc. But anthropology as a discipline, it deals with almost every part of humans. So that's why we can say that it bridges the gap between the humanities and the sciences. Sciences, why? Because whatever approach they have taken, it is all scientific. So that is the one major reason. The next anthropologist whom we are going to discuss is Clifford Geertz. He defined anthropology as an interpretive science. So interpretive science means they need to interpret what is the reason or meaning behind certain acts or certain rituals or certain cultural beliefs, etc. So what we can say is anthropology aims to understand not just what people do, but also why they do. According to Geertz, the major aim of anthropology is to uncover the cultural meanings and reasons behind various beliefs and practices. So this part is also called Geertz thick description. Let's see what it is. Geertz thick description is a method of ethnographic research and writing that involves providing a detailed context-rich interpretive account of cultural phenomena or practice. The goal of thick description is to go beyond the surface observation and facts to capture the deeper meanings, symbols, and cultural contexts that underlie human behaviors and practices. So this is what Geertz thick description means. So let's summarize. From Geertz idea of anthropology, we could say that anthropology as a subject employs ethnographic research method which is called thick description. The next definition of whom we are going to discuss is Nancy Banksmith. Though she is not an anthropologist, she has defined anthropology as the science which tells us that people are the same the whole world over except when they are different. So again, this definition captures three aspects of anthropology. It is a science, which you have seen in the earlier definition. Second, by stating that people are the same the whole world over. So this part of the definition captures that there is universality of human culture all over the world. Certain cultures of humans are universal. That's what it means. Third, by stating that except when they are different. So this part of the definition tries to convey that there is an enormous cultural diversity within humans. So let's explore these dimensions in detail. Universality of human culture. It means there are certain traits which are common for all human beings throughout the world. So it can be classified under three broader headings, that is biological needs, emotions, and cognitive process. Biological needs includes food or sex or clothing to protect from harsh environment. Next, the emotions, which includes crying, laughing, or being sad, etc. Then the third being the cognitive process, which involves the way we think or how we perceive things, etc. So this aspect of anthropology allows anthropologists to identify what unites humanity. There are enormous cultural diversity within humans. We have seen various difference of languages between each cultures. Even we can quote India for that perspective. Second, even the social structures between the communities or societies are very different throughout the world. Third, the values, the beliefs, or the customs which each and every community follows are different from each other. So this part underscores that though there are certain aspects which are very common to human beings, there are enormous cultural diversity within humans. So what is social structure? The definition says that it refers to organized patterns of social relationships and institutions within a society. Every social structure will have the following, namely status and roles, hierarchies, there will be an institution, fourth, there will be certain norms and values. Finally, there are some social networks. To explain you this, I'll give you an analogy of an university. Imagine an university. There are predefined status and roles. For example, there are certain status like professor or an HOD, a principal, a student, etc. So then there are predefined roles. For example, a professor will concentrate more on taking a lecture in research or in mentoring a student, whereas the role of a student is to attend classes, make assignments, and deliver the assignments on time, and to write exams and clear the exams. So these are predefined roles, and there are hierarchies. As I said earlier, even this status are arranged into hierarchies. For example, HOD will be the one with more power, and below comes the professor, and above HOD there is a principal. So there are various power structures between various statuses. Third, there should be an institution for a social structure to exist. So here the institution itself is a university with predefined or with many statuses and rules. Fourth, there are certain norms and values associated with these institutions. For example, if you take the case of university, there are certain time or discipline to be followed, uniform has to be followed, and there are certain etiquettes to be followed. So there are certain norms and values associated. Finally, there are social networks. We can find many students clubs, or we can find professor clubs for research and everything. So all these aspects forms a part of social structure, and this is what they're trying to define as organized patterns of social relationships and institutions within a society. Hope you would have understood. So having discussed about the social structures, we'll try to identify the different social structures that exist across the world. There are social structures based on kinship. For this, we could quote the example of Maasai people of East Africa. Caste system based social structures. The one and only example is India. Second, based on class. For example, we could quote USA. Feudal system based structures, where we could quote the medieval Europe. Feudal system in the sense society divided based on land owning class. So there are certain social structures based on gender. For example, we could quote Middle Eastern countries where women and men role are predefined, where women takes care of the household works or the parenting works, and men takes care of the social roles. And there are urban and rural structures as well as the global and transnational structures. So global and transnational structures, I could quote the example of WTO and World Trade Organization, which sets rules for the world trade to be carried. Let's summarize. Through Nancy Banks Smith's definition of anthropology, we could infer certain points of what is anthropology. Again, she has said that it is a science, and we have seen this in the earlier slides also. Second, the most important aspect is it is a study of both commonality and diversity of human cultures, which the point the universality and diversity of cultures explains. So these two key aspects which we could infer from Nancy Banks Smith's statement on anthropology. The next anthropologist whom we are going to discuss is Ruth Benedict. She defined the purpose of anthropology is to make the world safe for human differences. It highlights the humanistic plus the ethical dimensions of anthropology. But how? How anthropology can create a world that is safe for human differences? This is by following certain values. Anthropology as a discipline is against the values of ethnocentrism, but supports cultural relativism. So, what does two aspects mean? Let's see. Cultural relativism. It is the idea that no one culture is superior to another and that each culture should be understood and respected within its own context. Ethnocentrism. It is the belief that one's own culture is superior to others. For this case, I would like to explain the example of white man's burden, where the Europeans and the Americans, it is thought that it is their prerogative to civilize the third world countries, considering that their culture is more superior and the other cultures are inferior. This kind of practice is totally prohibited in anthropology, and because the major aim of anthropology is to promote an open-minded and non-judgmental understanding of other cultures. Let's summarize what we could infer from Ruth Bendick's statement on anthropology is anthropology as a discipline has a purpose that is beyond academic research, that is to create unity among humans. It also emphasizes creating an environment in which people of diverse cultures, backgrounds, and beliefs can coexist harmoniously without fear, prejudice, and discrimination. And to achieve this, anthropology is guided by the values of cultural relativism. So here we could take anthropology as a discipline has some values, and one of the values is cultural relativism. So while defining anthropology, this broad frameworks are very important, and that's why we are trying to discuss each and every definitions in detail. So this definition, I'm not pretty sure of whose quote it is, but I felt this definition captures the key aspects of the discipline. So I have placed it in the slide. It states that anthropology is the study of the biological and cultural diversity of humankind, past and present, through time and space. So, what does this definition tries to convey? It states anthropology studies humankind both biologically as well as culturally. Which this approach is called biocultural approach. This part has been separately asked in previous year questions in UPSC. So we'll discuss this in detail when we study the major subfields of anthropology. Next aspect which the definition tries to convey is it studies human past and present. That means past in the sense from ancient cultures to modern evolving societies. Next aspect is it studies human across time and space. It means it tries to investigate human diversity across different periods of history and in different geographic locations. So let's summarize. According to the previous definition on anthropology, we could infer these 2 points. That is, it studies man both culturally and biologically. Second, it studies man from both temporal and spatial perspective. The next anthropologist whom we are going to discuss is Evan Pritchard. He stated, anthropology is a science devoted to the comparative study of cultures. So, from this definition, we could infer that anthropology is a science, which we have already seen in the previous lectures. The another aspect which the definition mainly captures is it defines the approaches used. Approaches used in anthropology, that is comparative approach. So what does this comparative approach means? It means analysis of different cultures to identify cultural variations and similarities. So what is the purpose of this of using this approach? It allows anthropologists to draw generalizations and insights from or about human societies. What we have understood from Evan Pritchard's definition, we could state that anthropology as a discipline employs comparative approach to draw generalizations about human society.